The end begins. The stars were not shining the way they used to in the early days of the galaxy. Once full of light and hope, now they looked dull, cold, silent. Entire systems had vanished without warning. Planets where millions once lived were now only floating rocks without any sound, without any memory. The enemy was not a fleet of ships, not an empire with flags and orders. It was something older, something that moved in ways no mind could explain. The Eternals had returned and no one was ready. The Council of Light sat in the core chamber of the Unity Ring. This ring circled the last safe planet in the central sector. The chamber was filled with tension and fear. Words were few, faces pale. Leaders of different races sat together, their pride gone. Their fleets destroyed, their gods silent, their people waiting to die. Elder Marnak spoke first, his voice heavy. He was the speaker for the Valari, the oldest race of light. He said they had seen this before in stories older than their stars. Stories of the Eternals wiping out galaxies as if wiping away dust. No weapon worked against them, no mind could match them, no law could bind them. They were the end. One young voice spoke from the far corner of the chamber. Her name was Lyra, and she was not a leader, not a fighter, just a historian. She had studied old record stories lost to time, names hidden by fear. She stepped forward, her eyes not afraid but firm. She said there was one thing left, one story that was never allowed to be told. The chamber went quiet. She spoke of the Vault of Silence, a hidden world at the edge of the dark sector, locked by 13 seals, guarded by fear and law. Inside that vault lived a species forgotten by choice, a race so dangerous, so strange, that even the gods had agreed to lock them away. The ones who once shaped fire and machines, who spoke of freedom as if it was a weapon, who turned war into an art. The ones called humans. Voices rose in the chamber, some angry, some afraid. They said the humans were too wild, too broken, too cruel. They had no order, they followed no law. They once helped build a galaxy and then broke it with their fire. They had vanished after the great conflict, their name erased by all. Bringing them back was madness. But Elder Marnak raised his hand, his eyes full of something the others did not have anymore. Not fear, not hope, something deeper. He said, when every wall has fallen, when every god is silent, then even madness must be heard. He ordered the vote. The vote passed by one voice. The mission was simple: open the vault. The journey to the edge of the dark sector took 5 days. No ship had gone there for 10,000 years. The sky near the vault was empty of light. Even the stars avoided that space. The vault itself was not a structure but a world. Black, silent, covered in shifting light that seemed to whisper without sound. The team of 5 sent to the surface did not speak much. They were trained in silence. They carried no weapons. They only had the key made of light, memory, and sound. The seals opened one by one. Each seal released a wave of strange air, like thoughts touching skin. When the last seal broke, the ground moved, the sky changed, the wind stopped. A door appeared where there was none. From inside came a single voice, calm, quiet, not angry, not loud. It spoke in a language older than trade speech, but the translators worked. At once, you came to us. The voice was male, maybe, or maybe it only sounded like that to the ears of the listeners. There was no body, no face, only the voice. What did the gods do this time? The team stepped back, unsure. Then from the shadows came a shape. Humanoid, simple, tall, with skin like stone and eyes like storms. The figure looked at the team not with hate, but with sharp focus. Every breath, every blink was measured. The team leader spoke the message of the council. He said the Eternals had returned, that the galaxy was falling, that no hope remained. He said the council begged for help. He said they had no other choice. The human did not speak at once. He walked past the team and looked at the sky. Then he smiled. Without joy, you kept us here to protect yourselves from us, and now you ask us to protect you from something worse. The team had no answer. They only waited. The human said, very well, but you must give us full right to act as we choose. No orders, no rules. We will fight the way we fight. If you say no, we will stay here. If you say yes, then do not look away when the sky burns. The team sent the message to the council. The answer came quick, permission granted. The human looked up and spoke to the air open. The vault, the ground shook, the air grew heavy. Behind him more shapes began to appear. Men, women, machines, something between all three. Eyes like flame, hands like tools, voices like thunder without sound. They walked with calm steps, not rushing, not shouting. As if they already knew how this war would end, the human turned to the team you called monsters. Do not forget that he walked away, followed by the others. Far above in the ships orbiting the vault, strange lights began to rise. Shapes that looked like weapons but felt like thoughts. Something ancient had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The last choice, the vault of silence, no longer slept. From its black soil, from the cold wind, from the shadows, came those who were forgotten by time. Ships began to rise. Not smooth or silver like the Council's fleets, but rough, sharp shaped like claws shaped for war. Each ship moved with purpose, not with show. They carried no flag, no song, only silence. The Council watched from a safe distance. Their screens showed the human force moving into space. There was no delay, no question, no confusion. They moved as if they had seen this war before, as if they already knew what the enemy would do. Some council members whispered warnings. Others stared in silence, unable to speak. The leader of the council asked one question to the voice link. He asked Reed, the human commander, what they planned to do. Reed answered with only one line, "You gave us the right to act, now step aside." The council had no reply. Reed sat inside the command core of the lead vessel named Hammerfall. The name came from old Earth records. The ship's walls were covered with memory panels, glowing with maps, movement patterns, and lines of code. He stood in the middle, not on a throne, not above his people, but among them. His eyes moved fast, reading signs that no one else could read. He turned to his second, a tall woman named Kara, with a voice like metal and calm like night. She asked if they should wait for the enemy to strike again. Reed said, "No, waiting means death. We take the war to them before they reshape more systems, before they steal more time." The enemy, the Eternals, had not moved since the first strike. They were silent, floating near the Orion sector where 3 planets had once lived, now gone. Nothing remained, not even dust. They had no ships, no weapons in the normal sense. They appeared as storms, as shifting forms, as light that bent in impossible ways. Machines feared them, minds broke before touching their thought waves. But the humans were different. Reed ordered the approach. The human fleet did not move like other fleets. Their engines bent light, bent gravity. They disappeared and appeared in places without warning. They used old rules of war, but broke every law of logic. They reached the edge of the Orion sector in seconds. Their ships formed a ring, then split into small units, then vanished again when Eternal sensed the change. It turned its focus toward the human fleet. A form like fire and mist moved across the void. It touched one human ship with a wave of thought. The ship should have melted, should have vanished, but it did not. Instead, the ship shifted, its shape blocked. The thought wave redirected it back. For the first time in ages, the Eternal felt something new. Not pain, not fear, but surprise. The human ship released a silent weapon, a cloud of black threads that moved faster than light. The threads wrapped around the Eternal's form, pulling it into a fold of space that no being had ever returned from. The stars shook on the Council world. The Watchers gasped. The feed was delayed by seconds, but they saw enough. One Eternal defeated. In one move. No noise, no fire, only silence. The council leader turned to the others and asked if they had made a mistake. A voice answered from the wall screen. It was Lyra, the historian, the same who had first spoken of the vault. She was now with the humans as an observer, her request granted by Reed. Lyra looked tired, not scared. She said they did not fight with hate, they fought with reason. Every step, every strike, every silence was chosen with full control. She said the humans did not scream, did not pray, they moved like wind through fire. She asked the council to watch, not to judge, too. Soon back at the front, Reed stood inside a field of moving data. The first victory had come fast, but he did not celebrate. He knew the Eternals would change. They always adapted, always evolved. But humans had learned long ago that war was not about strength. It was about learning faster than the enemy. Called Kara and asked for the Dark Protocol to begin. She agreed and turned the ship toward the next sector. This sector held 5 Eternals waiting like statues. The human fleet split into 5 paths. Each unit moved without sound, without signal. They approached and attacked not with brute force, but with patterns, shapes, and logic that broke the rules of reality. When Eternal tried to shift into a different layer of time, the humans followed. One tried to become invisible across dimensions. The humans pulled it back. One tried to erase itself from memory. The humans remembered anyway. The Eternals began to respond. A wave of thought spread across the galaxy. Space cracked. Moons vanished. Time slowed, but the humans pushed back with machines that learned in seconds, with minds that linked in silence, with weapons that did not exist until the moment they were needed. Lyra watched from the shield deck. She wrote notes, spoke logs, sent messages to the council. She said this war was not one of strength or size. It was one of understanding. The Eternals used fear as a tool. But the humans had lived with fear so long it no longer ruled them, she said. The Eternals were used to being worshipped, feared, avoided. But the humans looked at them and saw only a puzzle to solve, a threat to remove. The humans began to win small battles one by one. Galaxy started to whisper again. Maybe there is hope. But Reed did not smile, did not rest. He knew this was only the start. The Eternals were not gods, but they were not fools either. They would strike back, and when they did, real test would begin. Unseen truths. The sky near the Orion sector had changed. What was once a silent battlefield was now filled with patterns of shifting light and broken time. Human ships moved through it without pause. Their systems kept updating their paths, their strategies, their weapons. Each change happened in silence. Not by orders, but by connection. Reed walked through the command hall inside Hammerfall. The floor glowed with maps of space in strange shapes that showed how the Eternals moved. He paused before a map that showed the new behavior of the enemy. It was not retreat, but something else. They were waiting, gathering, maybe adapting. Reed's eyes followed the lines, but his mind stayed ahead. He understood what was coming. The Eternals were not falling. They were watching. Kara stepped beside him. She had finished scanning the last battlefield where 3 Eternals had fallen. She gave no smile, no sign of pride. She simply reported what she saw. The patterns had changed. The enemy had begun copying parts of the human attack logic. Not perfectly, but enough to slow the next wave. She said they were learning. Reed nodded. He turned toward the deep space wall where Lyra stood. She had requested to join the next landing mission. He had not answered yet. Now he walked to her, asked why she wanted to go to the surface. She looked at him without fear. She said watching from a screen could not explain what made humans different. She wanted to stand where their boots touched ash. She wanted to feel. What made them a myth? Reed allowed it. The target was a broken world once called Velis Prime. The Eternals had touched it weeks ago. Now it was quiet, cold, burned in a way no fire could explain. Time ran strange there. Some areas moved fast, others stayed still. Trees stood without leaves, shadows moved without light. The team landed at the edge of a shattered city. Human soldiers moved ahead, scanning the area, mapping every movement of time and gravity. They did not speak. Their armor linked them. There, thoughts moved faster than sound. Lyra followed at the center, guided by one soldier with a calm voice and steady walk. His name was Joel. Joel showed her the ground where light refused to stay. He pointed at a building where glass floated in the air. He said this was where one Eternal had fed. Not on life, but on memory. The people here did not die. They were simply erased from all record. Lyra felt her breath slow. She asked how humans could fight something that did not follow rules. Joel answered with a quiet voice. He said humans once feared monsters under their beds. Then they learned to become worse things in the dark. He said fear was only strong when you let it stay hidden. Humans dragged fear into the open, then cut it apart far above. Reed watched from the orbit feed. The scans showed strange energy near the center of the ruined city. A shape was forming. Not a full eternal, but a piece. A scout, maybe a shadow. Reed sent 2 squads to intercept. They moved like shadows over stone. No light, no noise, only steps and silence. The contact was sudden. A soundless wave struck the team. One soldier felt his mind burned from the inside. The rest formed a pattern around the energy spike. Their weapons shifted, became tools, not guns. One tool bent time, another froze sound. Together they locked the shadow into a loop. Lyra watched as the enemy struggled not with pain, but with confusion. The shadow had no form, yet it fought like smoke and wind. But the humans moved with rhythm. They knew what it was, and what it could become. Joel pulled Lyra back as the final move began. A small device was dropped near the shadow. It did not explode. Instead, it absorbed the air, the light, the memory around it. The shadow vanished, not destroyed, but trapped in something like a cage of thought. Reed ordered the device brought back to the ship. He wanted to study it. Not to destroy the enemy, but to understand it. He believed the war would not be won by fire, but by truth. Lyra returned to the ship with Joel. Her face was quiet, but her hands trembled. She had seen something that no history book could hold. She had seen humans turn fear into math. She had seen them move like emotionless waves, yet behind every move was something deeper. Not anger, not pride, something older. She asked Reed later why the soldiers never cheered, never cried. Reed looked at her with eyes that held the weight of stars. He said emotion was a cost. If you spend it too early, you have nothing left when it matters. He said they save it for the end. The council received the latest report. Some members wanted to pull back, wanted to stop the humans before they became worse than the enemy. Others stayed silent. Only one voice spoke with certainty. It was the voice of Elder Marnak. Said the line had already been crossed. They had opened the vault. There was no turning back. Now they must follow the humans to the end, or fall alone. Reed received a signal from a deep space probe. A strange pattern was found near the edge of the Archon field. The signal was weak but clear. It was a thought wave. Not from the Eternals, not from the humans. It was from something else. It said they are not gods. They are not alone. They are afraid. Reed stood still for a long time after reading that signal. Then he turned to Kara and said, "Prepare the fleet. We move again. This time we go where the gods fear to walk." What remains of Mercy stars bent around the human fleet as they entered the Archon field. Space there moved like water without shape. Time echoed instead of flowing. Ships from the council had never entered this place. The Eternals had made it a grave for memory. Even light refused to cross its sky. But the humans moved forward like hunters following scent, not afraid of the dark, but drawn by it. Reed stood inside the command center, his hands resting on the data core. Strange lines moved across the screens, shapes that could not be read by normal eyes. Kara moved beside him, her voice low but steady. She said the pattern from the signal was growing. It pulsed like a heart hidden beneath layers of broken thought. Reed said this place was not a trap, it was a challenge. Below them, in one of the observation decks, Lyra sat with Joel, watching the darkness stretch across the stars. She asked what fear meant to humans now. Joel answered after a pause. He said, "Fear once ruled humans like a shadow that never left. But over time they learned to carry it instead of running from it." He said they turned fear into instinct, into action. And when fear became a tool, the enemy lost part of its power. The fleet stopped near a point where no stars lived. It was a hole in the galaxy, not empty, but full of silence. Reed ordered a landing team to prepare. They would enter the center of the field where the thought signal came from. Lyra asked to join again. Reed agreed. He said understanding was more dangerous than any weapon, and she had begun to understand more than most. They dropped into a space without gravity. Machines adjusted the field around them. Sound failed. Words were spoken, but heard only inside helmets. Shapes floated in the void. Not ships, not life, just forms drifting like dreams with broken wings. Joel moved ahead, scanning the way. The others followed in perfect shape. Lyra watched every step, every turn, every move. The deeper they went, the colder the silence became. Not cold like winter, but like memory being erased. At the center, they found the source of the signal. It was not a being, not a structure. It was a thought carved into reality. Lines of light held together by force alone. Reed stepped forward and touched it. Suddenly the space around them cracked open like glass under pressure. A wave of thought hit them. No pain, no noise, just presence. They were inside a mind too large for shape. It was one of the oldest Eternals. Not a fighter, not a destroyer, but a watcher. It spoke in silence. You cannot change what we are. You cannot hold what has no end. Reed answered with thought shaped by discipline. He said they were not trying to change the Eternals. They were trying to stop them. He said they were not gods, and the time of ruling through fear had ended. The Eternals showed them visions. Worlds falling not from war, but from belief. Civilizations had once worshipped them not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. The Eternals fed on worship, on fear, on surrender. They did not build, they only consumed. And now they were afraid of the species that did not worship, afraid of the species that turned fear into fire, afraid of the species that once fought itself to near extinction and survived. Reed stood silent for a moment, then said, "Fear is no longer your weapon, it is ours." Vision ended. The field around them began to collapse. The thought pattern broke. The Eternal retreated not from pain, but from understanding. For the first time it had been seen not as a god, but as a flaw. Back on the fleet, Reed gave the order to advance. He told Kara they would not wait anymore. The humans would strike the heart of the eternal source. The others might not follow, but the path was clear. Kara asked if mercy still had meaning. Reed looked at the stars and said, "Mercy without strength is noise." The fleet moved with new shape. Not like a wave, but like a storm with a mind. Ships turned into tools. Weapons became thoughts. Every move was built on data, memory, experience. They did not attack with rage. They attacked with understanding. The Eternals responded. From the edge of every sector they came. Forms of light and sound impossible to hold. But the humans met them not with fire, but with silence. They used weapons that mirrored the enemy's shape. They created paths through broken time. They dragged the gods down from the stars. Lyra stood inside the observation dome as the sky turned into a map of war. She saw not chaos but design. She saw how humans used weakness as fuel, how pain became reason. She saw the truth that made even the oldest council members shiver. Humans did not want to conquer. They wanted to end what should never have begun. Joel told her this was not about victory. It was about setting the future on the right path. He said power must be given, not taken. And the Eternals had taken too long on the council. Homeworld voices rose in fear and hope. Some said the humans would become the next danger. Others said they were the last line between survival and silence. Elder Marnak said they must not interfere. He said judgment must wait until the fire has gone. The final wave began. The human fleet entered the source system. A place never mapped, never touched. The Eternals had shaped it with thought alone. But now humans moved through it, rewriting the laws as they went. Each step brought the end closer. Reed looked at the center of the map, a place where no signal lived, no light reached. He said that is where it ends. No return, no retreat, only the last breath of a false god. We who remained, the final path led through space without stars. Light bent away, sound vanished, motion became a memory. The human fleet moved inside this dark shell, not with fear, but with purpose. Every ship adjusted to the strange forces around them. Data flowed like rivers across command decks. Shapes in the distance pulsed with broken logic. They had reached the place where the Eternals were born. Reed stood inside the controlled dome of Hammerfall. His eyes followed the map that changed with every breath. Kara stood at his side, silent, focused. They both knew the next moment would decide. Not just the war, but the direction of the future below. In the war room, Joel prepared the ground team. Armor systems flickered, weapons adjusted, shields tested again and again. Each soldier checked their systems without needing orders. They moved like one mind, split across many hands. Lyra stood with them, her presence now accepted not as a guest, but as one who had witnessed truth. Reed opened a signal to the fleet. His voice moved through every channel, every mind. He said this was not about revenge or pride. This was the task given to them by those who could not fight, by those who had lost. He said they were not gods, not saviors. They were the answer to a question that should never be asked again. The ships broke formation and formed a spiral around the source core, a place hidden by endless layers of broken space. The Eternals had made it a place no mind could enter without breaking. But the humans had studied it, shaped tools that could rewrite logic, that could walk through thought without being erased. First wave entered and did not return, not because they failed, but because they became part of the path. Each ship left behind a beacon, a thread that others followed. Reed sent the second wave with new orders, not to fight but to observe. They moved through fields where time repeated in loops, where shapes screamed without mouths, where fear took form and walked beside them. Humans adjusted. They did not block fear. They walked with it. Lyra watched from the observation deck as the sky broke apart and reformed like breathing glass. She asked Joel if they could win against something that never died. Joel answered by pointing at the fleet still moving forward. He said survival is not a question of winning. It is about choosing not to fall. At the center of the dark field they found it, the core of the Eternals. Not a building, not a world, mind stretched across space. It pulsed without rhythm, it sang without sound. It had no shape but reached across every thought, every system. Reed gave the final order: connect machines. Linked thought to machine memory, to light strategy to silence. They created a wave of understanding shaped from human will. It touched the core, and the core answered. A presence filled every ship, every mind. It spoke not with words, but with memories of falling stars, of burned worlds, of forgotten names. It asked why do you fight when you can kneel? Why do you resist when nothing can survive? Why do you not fear what cannot be stopped? Reed stood inside the center of the link and spoke with more than sound. He said because we remember. He said because we lost and still rose. He said because fear taught us to move, not to freeze. He said because no god has the right to rule through silence. The core responded with force. Ships broke, systems failed, some minds went quiet, but the wave held. The human thought kept moving. It changed the core from inside, not with fire, not with weapons, with memory. They showed the Eternals images of children playing in the dirt, of rain falling on broken cities, of hands reaching out after battle. They showed them death not as an end, but as a lesson. They showed them life not as control, but as choice. The core began to shift. Its shape cracked, its presence thinned. It could not hold what it never understood. Humanity had no perfect logic, but it had will, and that broke the core. The final light from the Eternals faded without a scream, just a long breath, like a wind passing through dry leaves. The sky above the Arkan field changed. Stars returned, light moved free. The storm was over. Reed ordered the fleet to stand down. Joel helped the wounded back to the med pods. Kara sent reports across the sectors. Lyra stood at the edge of the observation deck and watched as the dark field turned to dust. She wrote her final report. She said they did not destroy the Eternals. They showed them what they could never become, and that was enough. Fleet turned back. No celebration, no music, only silence full of meaning. When They reached the outer rim. The council sent a signal. They asked what price. Must be paid, Reed replied. The price is choice. Do not lose it again. Do not forget why we were called. And do not call again unless you are ready for what follows. The humans returned to the vault of silence. One by one the ships entered the black world. Seals closed behind them. No promises, no threats. Only one message left behind. We were not born to rule. We were born to rise when others fall. Remember that always. And the stars burned quiet. Once more the end.